Kaufman, Texas. January 31st, 2013, 8:40 a.m. It was a cool, brisk Thursday, almost the end of the week, and as attorney Jenny Parks crossed the street to head into the courthouse, it was the start of an average day. Nothing at all could have prepared her for what she was about to walk into. Someone was lying on the ground, not moving and surrounded by blood. It was her colleague, Mark Hasse.
Kaufman County 901. Yes, sir. We've got a gentleman on Grove Street and Madison that just got shot. I'm in Kaufman. I'm by the Annex building. Oh my God, it's Mark Hasse.
Mark had been shot 5 times, the final shot being to the side of his head. Ambulances and police would be there within minutes.
You might know anything about it. He's one of the DA prosecutors.
But Mark Hasse would die on his way to the hospital. Mark was a well-respected and successful felony prosecutor. He was now the assistant district attorney and described as one of the hardest working, professional and dedicated people you could meet. His brother and his mother were his only family, and his work was really his whole life. This had always showed his reputation was fantastic, and whether you knew him personally or not, you respected everything about him. He was a funny guy too, a big goofball that wore crazy sweaters just to make people smile as he walked past them in the hallway. Chief Investigator for the Criminal District Attorney's Office, Bruce Bryant, said, "I had the privilege of working one-on-one with Mark for the last year of his life. He and one other lawyer are the 2 best trial attorneys I've ever seen." To do something like this in broad daylight in the middle of the street was staggering, and to have gotten away and fled the scene showed a real level of planning. This was a methodically and well-orchestrated hit. There were no spent shell casings around either, so his killer had been careful to cover their tracks here too. One witness reported hearing Mark shouting, "I'm sorry," over and over again. Another witness described what looked like a shoving match between Mark and his killer. His killer was angry and there was a lot of shouting. A mechanic working across the road had seen a lot too. The shooter, a man with a broader build, dressed in all black wearing a mask, got out of a light silvery or grey-coloured car, possibly a sedan. There was a moment where Mark and him exchanged some words, before the man in black had fired at Mark. The shooter got back into the car on the passenger side, but he hadn't seen who was driving. The car was missing the number plate too.
Kaufman County Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse was shot multiple times in the parking lot a block from the courthouse. Police are looking for 1 or possibly 2 suspects witnesses say were dressed in black. Police say there was a very short confrontation between gunman and Hasse just before the attack. County Judge Bruce Wood.
Just an outstanding person individually, but he was also just a very well-known and very well-respected prosecutor for the district attorney's office. This is just a horrible situation, horrible tragedy.
The 57-year-old Hasse had been a prosecutor in the county DA's office for 3 years. He was earlier a prosecutor in Dallas, where he worked on mob cases. Investigators do not have a motive, but they describe the shooting as a targeted attack.
Certainly we have the police, the frontline people on the streets, but whenever it goes to murdering a prosecutor like this, that takes it to the next level.
We called the National District Attorneys Association to ask how rare it is for a prosecutor to be murdered in the United States. Scott, they knew of only 7 examples between 1967 and 2004.
Mark had been shot very closely and facing his killer. The fact he was apologising for something too added more weight to the fact that this felt very personal. He likely knew who his killer was. But the suspect pool was big and the investigation was already off to a tough start. As well as looking into Mark's personal life for anyone that might want to cause him harm, they also had to look at his professional life too. Mark's whole job was centred around putting people in jail, so there were no shortage of people in his past, and possibly present, that could be suspects, people that really hated him. Mark knew this too, and often carried a gun with him for his own protection. On the morning he was shot, his gun had been under the layers of his jacket and coat, and he hadn't had time to pull it out. Was someone avenging a conviction for themselves or on behalf of someone else? Was anyone else's life in danger? It really was unheard of for something like this to happen.
There has been so little leads in this investigation that late this afternoon, the Sheriff's Department actually canceled a press conference they were going to have right behind me because there's basically nothing to report. You could see the anguish on these law officers' faces this morning when they had to come out and say after 24 hours or so there were no significant advances in finding who did this. What investigators are now doing is looking through an extensive caseload that Mark Hasse was carrying and also all his past cases, trying to look for clues of a retribution or revenge killing stemming from one of his cases. But he prosecuted some really bad folks, members of the Aryan Brotherhood, white supremacists, Mexican drug dealers, meth drug dealers in this county. He was a good prosecutor, which means he prosecuted a lot of bad people. The sheriff says that has got them looking in all directions to see who could have done this. But right now, the only thing that's really changed in this story is the reward for any tip. It's up to near $70,000 for anybody who can help catch the killer.
Mark had been a big part of the team, and everyone had just lost a very good friend. The district attorney for the Kaufman County Sheriff's Office, Mike McLelland, held a press conference. For Mike, this had hit especially hard. Mike was determined to catch whoever had done this and address the killer directly.
My name is Mike McLelland. I'm the criminal district attorney for Kaufman County. The state of Texas, and especially my office, has suffered a devastating loss today. We lost a really, really good man. He was an excellent friend and a spectacular prosecutor. He will not be easily replaced. Anything that you people can do to accelerate getting our hands on this scum. I hope that the people that did this are watching. We're going to find you. We're going to pull you out of whatever hole you're in and let the people of Kaufman County prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law.
What's the part about this that hurts the most?
The fact that I can't reach out and grab somebody and do something about it right now, because I want them really bad. Mark was very well liked. He was a friend to everybody. And more than anybody knows.
Speculation started surrounding gangs like the neo-Nazi Aryan Brotherhood or the Mexican cartel. In November, 3 months before Mark was shot, 34 members of the gang were indicted on racketeering charges. Mark's office had played a part in this. And just weeks after Mark was killed, police felt they finally had a lead.
A new question about the murder of the chief of the prison system in Colorado, gunned down in his doorway on his porch. Was his death somehow a payback for trying to break up a white supremacist gang which has been organizing in American prisons?
100 miles away in Colorado, the head of the prison system, Tom Clements, was also gunned down on his doorstep. A member of the Aryan Brotherhood, Evan Ebel, was the only suspect in his murder. Was Mark connected to Evan? Was Evan working on behalf of someone else? They needed to find him. Evan was flagged down in his car 2 days after Tom was killed. But as the officer approached his vehicle, Evan pulled a gun out from his lap and shot him several times before speeding off. A high-speed chase ensued and police followed him for miles. Evan suddenly crashed into a truck and, although badly injured, he pulled his gun out as he and deputies started firing at each other. After a couple of minutes, Evan was shot and killed. Detectives concluded that he killed Tom Clements as a way to redeem himself. This answered one of the cases. Fortunately, the officer shot by Evans he was in his car survived, but it was yet another brazen shooting in broad daylight of someone in a position of authority and power. The same MO as Mark and Tom. There was now a big question mark over everything. Mark was very close to the DA, Mike, and obviously the whole team, so due to a conflict of interest, special prosecutors were brought in from neighbouring counties to help. Evan was eventually ruled out as a suspect in Mark Hasse's murder, after it turned out he wasn't even in the state of Texas at the time. Extra police protection and security often ramps up to support a community when something like this happens, but this time, it was the authorities that needed support and protection themselves. DA Mike McLelland brought guns for everyone in his office, so they could feel safer going to and from work. His son JR said he was the leader and the boss, but also a fatherly figure to everyone there. It was paramount that everyone felt safe. And as the investigation continued at a slow pace, authorities would be faced with another equally shocking and baffling case. Saturday, March 30th, 2013, Easter weekend.
And we begin on this Saturday night with breaking news. Kaufman County District Attorney Mike McLelland and his wife have been found shot to death inside their home. And sources are telling News 8 tonight this does not appear to be a murder-suicide. The stunning news comes just 2 months after the murder of Kaufman County Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse.
Many were planning dinners and get-togethers with their families, including the DA Mike McLelland and his wife Cynthia. Cynthia loved cooking and baking. She would often take cakes into the office for everyone too, and hosting a big family dinner was something she had been very much looking forward to. But when their phones started ringing out, people started to worry. Cynthia's daughter called her several times, and given everything that was going on, a friend decided to go over and check on them. But when they showed up at the DA's house, it was already too late. 63-year-old Mike and his wife Cynthia had been shot to death. Mike was right by the front door. Cynthia was in the living area. Everyone felt sick and stunned.
Police found the bodies of Kaufman County District Attorney Mike McLelland and his wife Cynthia inside their home in Forney, Texas, east of Dallas, last night. A source familiar with the investigation tells CBS News the couple may have been killed as early as Friday evening. Both had been shot multiple times with an assault rifle. In late January, McLelland's assistant DA, Mark Hasse, was shot in a parking lot near the county courthouse. Police have not identified any suspects in the murder and will not say whether they're aware of any connection between the cases. And neighbors say a police car was posted outside his home until early March.
Mike owned a lot of guns and carried one with him wherever he went, especially now he had been taking no chances. JR said there were guns all over his father's house, but this had been no match for whoever had done this. There were no signs of a forced entry either, so did Mike know his killer? Had he willingly let them inside? Mike had been shot 16 times and Cynthia 4, and this time, the killer hadn't been so careful to remove the shell casings, so there was a lot more evidence to bag up. Mike and Cynthia's home security cameras showed that someone had entered their house and left just 2 minutes later. More CCTV from around the couple's street showed a white car driving around at the time they were looking at. This was different to the car the mechanic had seen, but they were along the same lines in terms of colour. The security that had been put in place for the Kaufman County District Attorney's Office was increased to a level no one had seen before. It was unprecedented. All prosecutors and their families were given 24/7 armed protection. One day after the McLellands were killed, someone claiming to be the killer reached out to law enforcement through their online tip centre. But unfortunately, whoever this was could not be traced, as they were using an anonymous IP address. This was frustrating, but police did believe the person was genuinely who they said they were. They revealed things that had not been made public, and told them what firearms and ammunition were used in the shootings. Via an email exchange, the killer then gave them a chilling demand. They wanted one of the local judges to resign before the end of the week, or they would murder again. Do we have your attention now? Your act of good faith will result in no other attacks this week. We will not be stopped, the email read. People connected to both Mark and the McLellands and the District Attorney's Office, past and present, wanted to help and support as much as they could, without involving themselves and putting a target on their own backs. Eric Williams used to work in the legal system and knew both Mark and Mike well. He said as sad as it was, he was in shock that even people like him might be looked at.
My heart goes out to all the families that have been affected by this tragedy, and especially to the people that work at the courthouse. I worked there for several years while I was going to law school, and so I know that it's a tight-knit family and that this is devastating to them.
What's it make you feel like knowing that you've been somehow wrapped up in this?
It actually makes me feel that the police are doing the thorough job they need to.
Police and prosecutors could not leave any stone unturned. While the cases continued to be looked into, it was time for friends and family to say their goodbyes.
A memorial service is set for today for the Kaufman County District Attorney and his wife who were shot to death over the weekend. An overflow crowd is expected in a Dallas church for the ceremony to honor DA Mike McLelland and his wife Cynthia. No arrests have been made. Governor Perry is attending today's memorial, but beforehand offered incentive for anyone with information about the weekend murders or that of Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse, who was killed back in January.
Today I'm announcing that my office is offering a cash reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to the capture and indictment of those responsible for the deaths of Mr. and Miss McLelland as well as Mr. Hasse.
Cynthia was cremated and her ashes were placed in Mike's casket. A friend said they lived together, died together, and will be buried together for all time. Who had Mike and Mark worked on prosecuting together? What connected them? There was only one name and case they had worked on together: Eric Williams. The same man that had been talking to the media and offering his support to the investigation and families. 46-year-old Eric had a huge list of previous positions that made him such a shockingly unsuspecting person. He used to be a police officer, a former National Guardsman, an elected Justice of the Peace, a member of the Kaufman County Chamber of Commerce, a CPS attorney, and even later a judge. His life was very different now though, as he had been convicted less than a year before for stealing 3 computer monitors. Mark Hasse had been the prosecutor and Mike had assisted him. When Eric had been caught on CCTV walking out with the stolen monitors, Mike McLelland had given him the option of resigning and just leaving quietly with a misdemeanor on his record. But the arrogant Eric refused and chose to go to trial before ultimately being found guilty. He was spared jail, getting only 2 years probation, but he lost his law licenses and, by the sound of it, a lot of dignity and respect from his peers as well. Interestingly, Mike had actually even put Eric's name forward after Mark was shot, and within a few hours the police had turned up at Eric's door.
And you understand why your name pops up in
Absolutely.
Well, did you have anything to do with it?
No, absolutely not.
But they found him wearing a sling and very quickly determined that due to his alleged injury, he probably wouldn't have been involved. He was tested for gunshot residue on his hands, but this came back negative, so the officers left. And when Tom Clements was shot, their attention had moved naturally anyway. Detectives tracked down Eric Williams again. For a second time, Eric denied knowing anything about the triple murders. Police asked if they could go inside and Eric agreed. And this time, investigators spotted something: guns, and a fair few of them. Because of his conviction, Eric was prohibited from owning any type of firearm. He admitted that since he had lost his job, he had been selling guns to make a living.
But you don't mind us going out there and looking?
I'll take y'all.
You got rid of all of them?
One gun I'm trying to sell, and it's just hard as hell to sell.
Hey, just curious, how many guns did you used to own?
About 16.
Police had enough to get probable cause to search his home, and the pieces started falling into place.
We have breaking news now in Kaufman County. Investigators are searching the home of former Justice of the Peace Eric Williams.
Searches of his computer were chilling. He had been following Mark and Mike for months before they were killed, watching their home and running not only their license plates, but their neighbours' license plates as well. He had also made searches for the prosecutor involved in Mark and Mike's cases, seemingly getting a list of people together that he wanted out of the picture. They found a handwritten note connected to the Crime Stoppers tip line, and a receipt for a white car which had been purchased under the name Richard Green. It seemed a pretty clear-cut case, but with Eric denying everything, they still needed more to get a murder charge. On April 12th, the authorities placed Eric under arrest on charges connected to making terroristic threats. The following day, one of Eric's friends called the police. telling them he'd rented a storage unit for Eric. He didn't know the entire contents of the unit, but he knew there were guns in there. CCTV had showed Eric pulling up in the white car and going into the unit just before Mike and Cynthia were shot, and then again right after. Inside the unit was the getaway car. And once that was removed, they could see it was full to the brim with everything, from guns and ammunition to different uniforms, badges, bulletproof vests, and even a pickle jar full of homemade napalm. Eric Williams was charged with 3 counts of capital murder, but he hadn't done this alone. Someone had been driving the car. They went to talk to Kim, Eric's wife. Kim had a lot of health issues, so neighbours said she rarely left the house, but it was possible she had seen someone talking with her husband or overheard some conversations. But Kim would reveal far more than this. A few hours into the questioning, she broke down and started crying. She admitted it was in fact her that had been the driver for her husband. She said Eric had been planning everything for months, seeking revenge for his conviction, and he wanted everyone involved in that to pay. She said Cynthia had been collateral damage. Kim admitted that she shared her husband's anger and was happy to help him. She also admitted to being addicted to OxyContin, Valium, and morphine, which she said made her more desperate in her decision-making. She said she was so drugged up a lot of the time, she really wasn't able to think things through. In the case of the McLellands, Kim said Eric had dressed up as a SWAT officer and lied about a shooter in the area to gain access to the couple's home. Given everything going on, Mike quickly let him inside, truly believing he was there to protect him and his wife. And in the case of Mark, Eric had worn the black mesh mask because he needed to be concealed when it came to any potential witnesses, but he wanted to make it visible enough for Mark to know exactly who was about to take his life. On April 18th, Kim Williams was also charged with capital murder. But unlike Eric, she said she would cooperate fully and tell police everything to hopefully spare her something when it came to the sentencing. Kim then pointed them to Lake Tawakoni, which sat about 40 miles away from Kaufman, telling them they would find things in the water. But it was a lot of water and zero visibility. Over the next month, the dive team searched, and with just an hour to go before they called time on everything, they found what they were looking for. Inside a bag were more guns and a phone wrapped up. But once the black bag dried out, they realised what it was: the mesh mask he had been wearing to kill Mark. Although the exact murder weapon was never located, testing confirmed the ammunition at the storage unit matched the ammunition found in Mike and Cynthia's home. Towards the end of 2014, it was time to work out the trials. They chose to put Eric and Kim on trial separately, and Eric would also be tried for each murder separately, rather than Mike and Cynthia as a couple. Prosecutors decided to pursue charges individually, so that if one case failed, they would have another 2 chances of convicting Eric. And because Eric essentially broke into Mike and Cynthia's house, it counted as burglary. Burglary with murder made it a capital murder case, so the death penalty was a possibility.
After months of jury selection, testimony finally started today against the man charged with murdering the Kaufman County District Attorney, his top assistant, and his wife as well. Former Justice of the Peace Eric Williams sat quietly through the first day's testimony with a paperback Bible in front of him. The victims' relatives, including the DA's mother, sat a few rows behind. That's Mike McLelland's mom. Williams is on trial first for the murder of Mike McLelland's wife, Cynthia. The lead prosecutor, Bill Werski, opened the case describing the motive, that Eric Williams wanted revenge against the 2 men who prosecuted him for computer theft.
He comes in with an AR-15. He cuts down a defenseless Cynthia McLelland in a blizzard of bullets.
Some of the most powerful testimony, that was powerful, but even more so today, came from Cynthia McLelland's son-in-law. He's a Dallas police officer, and he and his parents were the first to discover what happened to the McLellands inside their home.
I walked in, took approximately 2 to 3 steps inside the residence, and my my parents were behind me, and my mom immediately hit the ground. She just fell to her knees and started crying. And then she pointed and said, "There's shell casings right under your feet."
This is a death penalty case, and Eric Williams' wife, Kim, is expected to testify against him sometime in the next few days as the prosecutors put on their case.
In December 2014, almost 2 years since Mark was shot, Eric's trial for Cynthia's murder began. His defense team were pretty confident. Yes, police had found a lot of things that connected Eric to the crimes, but they did not have his DNA or fingerprint evidence, or the murder weapon, the literal smoking gun. They argued the case was purely circumstantial. The prosecution had such a huge amount of this circumstantial evidence, it made for a really strong case, including everything that Kim had told them, everything on his computer, and everything in the unit and Lake. Eric's lawyer said the emails could have been sent by Kim. Eric Williams was not the only person in that house who actually did type it. Who? You do not know. There is not a single eyewitness in this case. Special Prosecutor Bill Wersky replied, there was an eyewitness, but he put a bullet in her brain. They described Eric as a ruthless killing machine. Eric approached the trial in the same way he did everything else. He didn't seem bothered at all. He sat with a smug smirk on his face most of the time, clearly thinking he was the smartest person in the room. Even as the jury left to deliberate, he remained cool, calm and cocky. But after only 3 days on trial and 2 hours of deliberating,
guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment. You may be seated.
Eric Williams was found guilty. A few days later, it was time for the punishment phase, and Eric's wife Kim took the stand for this part. The prosecution had been very strategic in not asking her to enter the court before this time. They wanted her testimony to be the final thing that the jury heard. Her words would tell the court exactly what a cold-blooded, arrogant and vicious killer he was, in a way that no one else would. She was the only person that could really tell everyone the full and shocking story.
Before deliberations began, they heard revealing testimony from Williams' estranged wife and confessed accomplice.
In shackles and jail stripes, Kim Williams never looked at her husband when she walked into court. Prosecutors wasted no time getting her confession on the stand.
Did you pull the trigger in these murders?
No, I did not.
Who did?
Eric Williams.
Were you a willing participant in these murders?
Yes, I was.
What happens once Eric gets out?
He catches up to him, and then I hear shots fired.
How many shots do you hear?
I want to say 5.
Are you watching the murder?
No.
Why not?
I couldn't.
Once he goes into the McLelland home, what happens next?
I hear shots.
Loud?
Yes.
How many?
A lot.
What's going through your head as you hear these shots?
That he's shooting them. Oh my gosh.
At that time, are you happy about that?
At that time, yes.
Kim said that her husband had planned on killing Kaufman County Judge Early Wiley and Senior District Judge Glenn Ashworth as well.
The defense attorney for a former justice of the peace convicted of capital murder pleaded for mercy from the jury.
Because if Eric's motive was revenge, then his revenge has been delivered, and Eric is no longer a risk. We must stay in line with life without the possibility of parole.
The prosecution was satisfied when the jury came back again.
A jury today decided there was no reason to keep convicted murderer Eric Williams alive, so they sent him to Texas death row.
Eric Williams would be put to death by lethal injection. As he was already now on death row, the prosecution said they would not be trying him for the murders of Mike or Mark. They had gotten the result they wanted. Kim accepted a plea deal and was spared the death penalty. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison and will first be eligible for parole in 2034. Kim would also file for divorce. Eric was denied a new trial in 2015 and again in 2019, but he continues to file appeals. In January 2024, his defense attorneys filed again, arguing they did not have enough time to prepare for his trial and that Eric has brain damage. Prosecutors said there was a real irony in Eric waging a war on the criminal justice system, yet here he was now, begging the same system to protect him and give him another chance. As of 2025, no execution date has been set. The lengths that Eric Williams went to kill everyone involved in him serving time for a crime he committed, but one that he could have just walked away from quietly, is as strange as it is shocking. In the grand scheme of crimes we look at on this channel, stealing $600 worth of computer monitors realistically seems so minor. He had been spared jail and outliving his life, yet he chose to become a triple murderer, ending up on death row, all over a conviction for theft. It really is bizarre that he thought the only way to make himself feel better about this was to take people's lives. There's just no words for how little this could possibly make any sense to anyone. But one thing is for sure, Eric caused so much destruction and left so many people's lives irreparably broken as a result. Chief Investigator for the Criminal District Attorney's Office, Bruce Bryant, paid tribute to all 3 victims. Mark was a great storyteller. He had the energy of 2 men. He was constantly flying up and down the stairs in the courthouse to deliver a file or get something needed for a case. The door to my office would bust open and Mark would come tearing in with his standard greeting of, "Dude, I miss hearing that. I miss him terribly." Mark and Mike were 2 of the finest people it will ever be our privilege to know. Our lives are richer for having known them. If Cynthia was all warmth and motherhood, Mike was a warrior. Mike proudly served his state and country. It was obvious Mike and Cynthia loved each other and they were happy together. And now, together for all eternity, they have left us. He had great stories. He loved to tell tales of his adventures, and I love listening to them. A couple weeks ago, he promised to tell me about some of the places he had never officially been. I'll have to wait a while to hear those stories. We are so grateful to all of our viewers and all of our patrons, and we'd love you to consider joining our little community over on Patreon. It supports us as a channel and we couldn't be more appreciative of anyone that does so. It also gives you behind the scenes, extra episodes and early ad-free access.